Greetings, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the podcast. I am your host, Jimmy Good, and joining me for the third time in a row, it's a hat trick, baby. It's the Jastrom, or I know him as Jason. Jason, how you doing, pal?
Hello there.
Hello there, indeed. Oh my
Thanks
gosh.
for having me, Jimmy. It's been nice to be on here for the hat trick.
Dude.
I'm excited to talk Star Wars type stuff.
Yes, I appreciate you being on for this. And for people who don't know what I'm talking about, Jason was on. We talked about the Xbox Bethesda Showcase. We also talked about Jurassic World Dominion. And now, this time around, we'll be talking about the TV series over on Disney Plus known as Obi Wan Kenobi, or just Kenobi. Because I've seen the marketing. I think
it should have been called Old Ben.
Old Ben. That's the season 2.
Okay.
Spoiler alert, he doesn't die in this. I should have said that earlier, I think. Just in case.
He doesn't fall through a trap door in the floor.
Yeah. Yep. No, he doesn't. But yeah, so basically we're going to do this the same way we did Jurassic World Dominion, where we talk kind of in broad strokes about the whole thing, and then I'll flip the old spoiler switch, which I, again, had the service guy come out and look at, says it should be totally fine this time, no sparks.
Oh, that's good.
We'll see. And then we'll get really into spoilers. But don't worry, there will be a very, very distinct moment when we go into spoilers, either way. And if you're watching on YouTube or listening on YouTube, there will be a timestamp on there as well. But anyway, let's get into it. Kenobi, Obi Wan Kenobi, basically it follows the story of our titular character having to leave his post, watching over the very famous Luke Skywalker on Tatooine, to go help out in another kind of adventure and the twists and turns along the way. I think most people listening to this probably know more about like the general synopsis, but like I feel like I can't say more than that, because if I do, anything is considered to be a spoiler. But in general, broad terms, Jason, how do you feel about seeing Obi in this kind of in-betweequel, as it were? Is that, I don't know how you call it, like one of those two things. But how did you like it?
I had zero expectations going in. Like for years, I had thought about for years I thought about what would you do in an Obi-Wan series, and unfortunately the Mandalorian kind of stole some of that thunder of what I would do, because I was like, okay, he's on Tatooine, so I would do adventures on Tatooine. We'd see some Jawas, maybe like on a Jawa car, and we'd get all that. But they covered a lot of that in The Mandalorian. They even did a crate dragon hunt. So they even did, I was thinking like, okay, this is Obi-Wan. He's looking after a young Luke, and he's got to chase after this kid or whatever. But they kind of did that on The Mandalorian with Grogu, right? So when it came to this show, I was like, I don't know what they're going to do. And you get surprised in that first episode that Luke doesn't have a lot to do with it, you know?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, you make a good point, because that's I was thinking probably the same thing too, not as complex as you said, or kind of the specific details. But yeah, I was trying to think like, okay, what do you have Obi do? And one of the other issues too is now with Boba Fett, is that you can't have it be like a Obi fights off a bunch of the Tusken Raiders thing, because they've kind of made them sympathetic, at least nowadays, or different tribes. You know,
you've done 2 series now, both taking place in the sandy Tatooine, and it's like, now we're gonna have another series on Tatooine? Are you kidding me?
Yeah, no, definitely. And I know that Mando kind of jumps around a little bit more, but still, I know what you mean, where it's like, yeah, you could have him do things, or he could be some sort of kind of person for hire on Tatooine to just kind of keep his skills sharp. And because he's got, 18 years that he's on Tatooine, just kind of hanging out?
Yeah.
Not doing much?
You can imagine in that span of time, he leaves the planet every once in a while or something, but
yeah.
My original idea for the show is picture baby Luke crawling through like a construction site, and Obi-Wan's like, ah! And he's chasing after him, and he's like crawling on the girders, and it's like lifting up. It's like the old Warner Brothers cartoon.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Bum, 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 bum. You know, he's like, ah! It would have been great.
Falls into cement mixer, but gets out like the back end. But Obi only sees him go into the cement mixer, and he's like, "No!"
Yes. It's just him chasing after a baby.
Oh, I'm sorry. I would say carbonite mixer, not a cement mixer.
Yes.
Come on, Jimmy, you idiot. Yeah. That could. So it's Mr. Magoo in a way too. Like he wouldn't be Mr. Magoo, but he'd have to follow around a young bumbling Luke. Yeah, I could see that. I don't know if it'd be 6 episodes worthy, but
yeah, you can do 6 episodes.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm just thinking of stuff like the problem is you can't have like Luke and old Ben or Obi have like a relationship because I would just love a little bit more of that. Like, you're not my dad. Like it's like preteen Luke. And Ben's just like, God, that would have been sees terrible. Him at the cantina and he's like, you don't want to drink this, Luke. And he's like, you're not my dad. That would have been great. Anyway, that's not what this show is.
Luke, is that death sticks? He's like, yeah, you don't own me, man. It's taking a drag.
He's like, oh my gosh. He's like, your father wouldn't like this, and he's like, my father. You don't know my
father's dead. Storms off, slams the door.
That's a good question. Does Luke know? Okay, it's aunt and uncle, so he knows that they're, he's not adopted, but he's like living with his aunt and uncle. So it's not really a question. So, okay. So he does know. I was just thinking about that for a second. I was like,
his father died in the war. He was like a trade pilot or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, my dad loved death sticks. Luke, stop. Yeah. See, we would have taken it in a different direction, clearly. But so did you say that you enjoyed this or somewhere in the middle on this?
The entire series?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I enjoyed a lot of it. The one thing that was fantastic is Ewan McGregor. He's just so good. And I love the first episode, how it establishes a kind of broken Obi-Wan who he's in hiding. He's not even willing to kind of step up and help another Jedi because his one job is to protect Luke, and that's it. And he doesn't want to get involved in anything else. And he doesn't really practice the Force anymore. I mean, he does kind of talk to Qui-Gon, who's not there and not answering and working, packing fish and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, packing meat and whatever away for his weird camel thing. I
thought that Ewan McGregor was solid throughout this entire thing.
Yeah. He is like the big draw, I think. Besides the other person who may or may not be a spoiler, but I love him. I think he's a very good actor. I buy everything he does. I think I almost just want the whole show to be about him, and I know that they didn't do that, and I know that's kind of hard to do, but he's just so good that I'm like,
and he's so damn photogenic. Like,
oh yeah,
he looks fantastic in his Jedi robes or flowing in the wind, and he's grizzled. He just looks great.
Yeah, he does look wonderful, and he's so good. He's just so good. And this is the thing I've talked about for years on this show, even, that I've wanted this out of any of the kind of proposed ideas. This was the one that I was like, I really want that because I want Ewan McGregor back. Because in the prequel trilogy, he is one of the main things that is so compelling and cool to watch, because how he like changes over time and becomes like the wizened old Jedi. And I just love him. I really do. So yeah, I'm totally right there with you. Ewan McGregor is the best. So good. So good. Any other things you want to say about this while we're speaking in broad terms?
We're speaking in broad terms, right? So not any major plot points. So I'm going to say I overall enjoyed the series. There's times that it could be incredibly goofy and staged strangely. And there's sometimes where it looks like they're on a soundstage. And not a lot of Star Wars movies look great and fantastic and epic in scope, but this sometimes looks small in scope, if you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I know this is probably a big budgeted thing, and I'm not even complaining about the budget or anything like that. I'm just saying sometimes it just came off a little weird.
Sure.
Or just maybe clumsy, some of the choreography or something. But overall, I'm not overly hypercritical of the show, I had a good time with it.
Yeah, I think I kind of fall mostly where you do. I think one of the things that I've always seen as an issue with like a prequel thing to start off with is like, all right, for prequel stuff like even Star Wars or Hobbit, to some degree they try to like go up to roughly the line of where the original thing started, or where you're, where the story that most of us got introduced to begins, right? So you're painting up into that line. But this, you have to like get in between two pieces and be like, all right, I can start from here, but I can only go to here, and only so much can happen. And that right there makes it really, really tough to make a compelling story, I think, because you can't really have like these far-reaching consequences, because you're like, oh yeah, we've got like this lore on the other end of this that like everybody knows
in here.
Yeah, and it's like that's where it's hard, I think, and difficult to make your stakes, feel realistic.
I almost wouldn't have even involved Darth Vader in this story. Yeah. I would have kept it into a small story, but I know that's not what they want to do. They want to involve things we know and we've seen before, and his deal with Anakin is a big deal that they have to deal with, and I understand that. I just probably would have kept it smaller if it was me, but hey, I'm not in charge of these stories, so what do I know?
Not yet. You're not, Jason. One day
that's right. I'm
be
taking over soon. I just need to bump off Dave Filoni.
Dude, yeah. Okay. Would you mind? Could you give me like a role in something when you get to that part? Thank you. Appreciate that. Thank you so much. It's all about who you know.
Be a good protocol droid, Jimmy.
What? Hey, no, I want to be a Sith. I think I'd be a great Sith, because like you wouldn't see it coming. They'd be like, "Oh, we're gonna cast
a Sith Lord."
Well, maybe. Well, that'd be nice. But it'd be like, oh, like that nice guy, and be like, yeah, but he can tap into something dark. Like we see him on set, and he's very scary. Yeah, man. I wanna start cutting down some Jedi, man. It's freaking. Get rid of those guys. Anyway,
oh my goodness.
Yeah, the Jedi. Hey, did you watch the prequels? They're a bunch of jerks, man. They're if they would have been just a little nicer.
Somebody needs to sit in those chairs.
Somebody has to sit in those chairs. If they would have been a little nicer, and they would have been like, you know what, Anakin, you could be on the council. Just let's give him the rank of master, guys. Like, is it really that big a deal? Like, is it worth getting us all killed over? Like, that's what they should have thought. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah. They should have kept him happy.
Yeah. Sorry, but yeah, I agree with you for the most part. And like I said, it's so hard to talk about this without getting into spoilers, which I think it might be time for. But basically, the last question I want to ask you, Jason, is for Star Wars fans and for not Star Wars fans, is this worth checking out on the good old Disney Plus?
Yes. If you're not into Star Wars, probably you're not interested, but I don't know. That's pretty tricky. You never know which Star Wars fan you're going to get. One that hates The Last Jedi, or, you never know. I would just say, hey, if you're interested, just watch it. And you may not just bail on the first episode if you don't like it. I don't know.
Yeah. That's the nice thing about the commitment to these types of things on a streaming service, is that you do not need to watch it all. It's not like a movie where you have to like go out and it's like, all right, like if you're going to see Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, you have to go to a theater. I say that now it's just on Disney Plus. Like it just gave Disney Plus. So
Ewan McGregor returning was enough for me to want to tune in.
Exactly. Yeah. So I'm right there with you. All right. So Jason, if you are prepared, it's not going to be a big deal. I'm going to flip the spoiler switch so we can just get right into it. Are you ready?
Let's do it.
Okay, here we go. It should be fine right now. Oh, God!
My goodness.
So many spoilers. Jason. And apparently...
I've got a bad feeling about this.
This guy, he said he fixed it. I think there were more sparks than ever. There ever have been.
Did you get the guy at Cloud City to fix that? Because
you're right. I did get that guy to fix
Old Bespin?
Yeah, the guy with the bald guy with the thing around his head.
Yeah, he's got the Bluetooth headphones.
I know he has a name, and I know that he looks like he could be from Star Trek, but I don't know.
The Sith Inquisitor, the Grand Inquisitor, he's got some Bluetooth headphones too.
He does. He's listening to some sick beats. It's just the Imperial March just on.
All he hears is doops, 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 doops.
Yeah, that's why he's so angry. Anyway, we're going to get into spoilers, and I'm going to talk about some specific things here. Some things I really loved. Jason, because I like to build up, right? The introduction with like previously on Star Wars, and they like cut together the entirety of like the prequel trilogy. I loved that. I was like, and like the slow turn of Anakin on Mustafar and everything. I was like, oh my gosh. I was like,
we even get to see Padme die.
Dude, it makes me want to go watch those immediately. I was like, oh my gosh. Like, it made it really cool. I was like, that was sick.
You were the chosen one.
And like Obi, I think it's in the second episode. It might be the first, but I think it's the second, where Obi has a nightmare. And it is flashbacks to that stuff again, and I was like, "Oh, like I love that sort of thing." Because like it's cool. That was cool.
It was almost like previously on Star Wars.
Yeah, well, he's got like a PTSD of it all. You know what I mean?
Yeah, big time.
And
he is haunted by all of these things that happened.
And it's like 10 years on, and he's still like it's still a problem. And continuing with that, the first real thing we do get as a shot is like 66, Order 66. And I was like, man, they're going to show a little bit of this, but they'll never show Anakin killing kids.
Right.
And I was so happy that I was wrong. Because while they kind of dance around it, later on you do see Hayden Christensen returning as Anakin Skywalker, walking in with clone troopers, and they dance around it with the editing, but he's chopping down younglings. Right. And I was like, oh my gosh, they did the thing Revenge of the Sith only hinted at. And I know this sounds sick. It's like, Jimmy, why would you want to see this? Like, those are poor children. But it is such a crucial part of his descent to the dark side that they have not really shown. And in the video game that tied into the movie, you get to fight like a few, like, there's like even a Jedi Master you fight. And I always wanted to see that because there had to be a few people that Anakin fought at the temple who were not just children with lightsabers, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like we're still like getting closer to that day, but I love that the shot of Anakin just coming in Revenge of the Sith to the temple with all the clones, but now they kind of do it again a little bit here. But I want to see more of 66, Order 66, because it's such a big deal, and they keep showing it off in all these other shows, but that was like, that's ground zero, right? That's the epicenter.
There is so much, like the fact that we played Jedi Fallen Order, the video game. I feel like the guys who made the show, they're like, they just got done playing it.
Yeah, right.
Because there's so much stuff in this that kind of reminds you of that game that it's kind of funny because the fact that like those pupils, the younglings that survived, they went on to do other things, Sith Inquisitors, etc.
Yeah.
That it just was so close to the Jedi Fallen Order themes, wasn't it?
Oh, very much so. And, there's still kind of that idea of like, I've always wanted a Vader show, and like one of the ideas could be like Vader making the Inquisitor program and like taking some of the younglings and kind of, warping them, twisting them, and having that sanctuary or that fortress, it's like the Inquisitorius something, the one that's in the ocean, that's like the final scene in the game. And I was like, okay, so like clearly they know about this place. It's a big deal. And I was like, okay, yeah, you're totally right. And I'm playing through it again right now, like streaming it, and I'm like, yeah, there's definitely some of that heritage there. But the other thing I do want to mention before we get more into the Inquisitors is that there's in episode 5, we get this kind of flashback that kind of mirrors or mimics what's happening in the episode between Obi-Wan and Vader. It's Anakin and Obi training at the temple. And if, again, I'm not you, Jason, one day, who's going to be running the show. Who knows? But had it been me, I would have structured the entire series like that episode. I would have made it like it would have been half flashback, half like current, just the way that Arrow used to do it, which was kind of frustrating in a long-running TV show. But for something like this, I'm like, if you get Hayden Christensen back, why not use him?
On Arrow, that was super frustrating because it's like, how long are they going to be doing this device?
Yeah, we've been on the island for like 5 years, and then they like blew up the island. But yeah, I just thought, I was like, man, this would have been a cool thing to do. I would have loved to see more of that because I loved that sequence, and it was just cool to see like kind of they tried to make him look as young as they could, Hayden Christensen, but they clearly both still have the moves, which is great.
It was cool choreography to their little sparring session.
Yeah, and it's funny because like they are sparring, but there's like times where you're like, man, if one of them slipped up just a little bit, this sparring session would have gone poorly.
They did a good job of making Anakin also seem on edge. Like, this is kind of scary. He could easily just be like, I'm going to kill Obi-Wan here because he's not getting how great I am, and it's pissing me off, kind of a thing, you know?
And that just shows how compelling those characters are, and that kind of setup was because we both know how, or everybody knows how that little sparring session is going to end, but there are genuine moments where you're like, uh-oh, like, is he going to go crazy here? Like, but you're like, well, that doesn't make any sense, but still, there's that part in your brain that's like, well, but still, this is weird. But I would have loved to see that and that kind of mimic some of the stories that Obi-Wan was dealing with on Tatooine or wherever else, and it would have been showing off more of their kind of the stuff that happened maybe in the Clone Wars that they didn't show, things like that. But I loved seeing that. I love seeing those two together, and I just didn't get enough of it. And I think their chemistry is so good, and I'm like, man, I just want to see more of that because they seem like genuine friends. And I'm like, I wanted more of that sort of thing.
They were brothers, basically.
They were brothers, and that's why it's so kind of it's sad. And that's one of the interesting things here because a lot of people look at A New Hope and kind of their exchange there, and it's pretty brief. And this show kind of tries to lead into that a little bit better than Revenge of the Sith did, as far as like, oh, this is their first meeting in a long time. It's like, well, no, they met in between, I guess, at one point, and that's kind of the hook of the show. And I know what you said earlier about Vader not being in this, but I think at first it's like you get a lot of people who are like, oh yeah, Kenobi, he's pretty cool, but then it's like when you say the words Darth Vader, everybody looks and they're like, well, it's like Rogue One. Everybody was like, oh, that sounds like a cool story. And they're like, but Darth Vader's going to be in it. Everybody's like, I'll go see it immediately. Like, it's like you have to see it, right?
You realize, like, that's like, as soon as the show started, I was like, oh, this is the story I'm going to get. Because, know, I had no idea that young Leia was even going to be in this story at all.
No idea. I had no idea about that either. And I get where they picked her to be the thing that brings him off planet because it is kind of equal importance, down the road to a degree.
Organa has a funny line. He's like, no, I must protect the boy. And he's like, well, why not the girl? Like, she's just as important because people for years, when you think about like, how come only Luke was the one who was the chosen? Why didn't Leia, was she not even considered?
Sure.
Like, oh, midichlorians don't go to girls. It's like, what is the reasoning here?
Yeah.
So I like that Bail Organa kind of said like, hey, how is she less important? And he's like, he's got a good point there.
Yeah, it's tricky because like in the modern sensibility of it now, definitely. And at that time, because they didn't know what was going to happen. The problem is we just know how much more important Luke is to the original trilogy than Leia is. And that's
Leia's equally important. She does a lot.
She does some stuff. That's for sure. She watches her planet get blown up. I'm just kidding, Leia.
She's a general.
She is a general.
I mean, later on, she's in charge of like people and stuff.
She is. No, I'm not saying that she isn't important.
Luke is just like, jeepers, like a lot,
He's like, jeepers, I have to turn my dad back to the good, to the light. What?
I gotta go to Dagobah or something.
Exactly. But yeah, and that's the issue you have. Like again, because this is an in-between, and you have new ideas or more modern ideas that you want to make and put on a thing that's 40 or 50 years old now. It's tough, right? It's hard to do that. But I get where like they want to be like, all right, if there's any reason to leave Luke, it's for Leia. To go save her. It also means that Luke is completely open to attack. So it's not like Bail had some great plan. Bail's like, I'll go to Tatooine and check up on the kid. He'll be fine.
There was some great stuff with Leia also in Obi-Wan where they're together. And I love the moments where she's like, did you know my parents? And it just like guts him. Like,
my favorite is when she's like, are you my father? And I love that Obi says like, the two ways you could take it, because he's like, I wish I could tell you I was. And the way they meant it is very much like him just saying, it'd be really cool if in this scenario I could just be like, yeah, I'm your dad, and this is we are, related. The funny way that I like to jokingly interpret it is be like, your mother was a very attractive woman, but I couldn't because I was a Jedi. That's the comedy or the comedic way to go with that. But
I would have been your father, but Anakin called dibs.
I met your mother when she was the queen, and she was like 14, and it would have been totally weird, and I'm a Jedi, so I'm not your dad.
It would have been inappropriate.
It would have been really weird, all right?
In fact, it was inappropriate what your mother did have with your father.
Exactly.
He's younger than her.
Yeah, he was 9. It's weird.
Yeah, we just don't talk about that.
I was not at her funeral. I was not invited. Apparently, it was a weird thing. Which, side note about that, do you think, well, I guess Vader was getting turned into Vader at that point, maybe, or it's time afterwards. Do you think that, they held the funeral and Vader, didn't go, or Palpatine let it happen, but he, was like, Vader, you shouldn't go to this? Or was he like, Vader, you should go watch that?
He's like, you weren't invited. Her parents don't like you.
Yeah, they're not a huge fan. But yeah, so we should talk about a little bit. Everybody calls her Little Leia. She's just Leia, young Leia, right?
Yeah, and I love seeing that she is the stubborn little princess on Alderaan, and her parents can't keep track of her because she runs off on her own a lot. She's her own person.
They need a better security detail, though, because this keeps happening.
A lot of people I saw on Twitter made fun of that scene where she's getting kidnapped and she's running away from all the bad guys. And they're like, what is this scene? She's ducking under branches and stuff. They all thought it was a little ridiculous, but
yeah, they're adding that action.
I'm not as judgmental or anything like that. I was mostly pulled out of the movie because Flea, Needles from Back to the Future 2, was one of the kidnappers.
I didn't know that was who that was, and I remember seeing him, and I was like, this guy looks like he's from like a different thing altogether. It's kind of like the people in Boba Fett who were like the cyberpunk, they had the little Vespas, those, and I remember thinking this doesn't seem like a Star Wars thing, because when I saw him, I'm like, you don't look like a Star Wars dude, or something. And that's not that he couldn't be, but at first I was like, is this a thing that I don't know about? Is this like a lore thing? Is this like a lore character?
He's just what you call an individual.
He's an individual. By
the way, Alderaan, nice place. I'd love to see that place again someday.
I was going to say, that was one of the nice things about this, is that Alderaan, it does get some time to shine, and they do show it off, and it's it's a really pretty, beautiful, peaceful place that Leia cannot prevent having be exploded. But that's just what happens, man.
All of these people die.
Yeah. You know what? This would have been the time, though, to jokingly have her mom tell her, she'd be like, "Oh, Leia, don't talk to me. You need to speak with a higher accent or something." And that's where her faux British accent in the beginning of A New Hope could have come into place, and be like, when you're addressing someone like this, you must talk in some sort of haughty accent, or something like that. That would have been a funny little thing, because Leia's got 10 seconds of British accent, I think, in A New Hope that goes away really quick, or something. But Alderaan looked like a nice place. I was like, oh, this is cool. And I thought originally, when she got kidnapped, I was like, oh, it's the cousin that hates her. I was like, the cousin and the cousin's family hates the Organa clan, and this is the reason she's getting kidnapped. And I was like, oh, that's, I thought that's the way they were going. And I was like, no, it's completely different. I was like, oh, okay.
So we need to talk about the Inquisitors, especially Reva, because they show up on Tatooine looking for a Jedi who's been helping people. At first you're like, oh, what has Obi-Wan been doing? But it's not Obi-Wan at all. It's another guy. Yep.
Mm-hmm. Some other guy who gets messed up.
Yeah, I love that the guy comes to Obi-Wan for help, and he's like, I can't help you. You're on your own. And he's just like, really? Okay. Yeah. And later on, he sees him strung up in town where... Did you get the feeling that the townspeople killed him and hung him up there?
No. No, I don't think so. I think the Inquisitors
do that.
Yeah, the Inquisitors did that. I think it's funny that you thought that, though. They mobbed up on him.
Well, because the Inquisitors kept bothering everybody. It's like, the only way we're going to get rid of these people, we go kill that Jedi ourselves. How powerful of that scene would have been, people with pitchforks and stuff. They're hunting him down. He's like, no, I'll help you. And they just, take him out. That would have been terrible.
And then he ignites his lightsaber and he says, I'll do what I must. Starts fighting townspeople. No, I'm pretty sure that's the Inquisitors. Or like, I guess a way around that to kind of incorporate what you're talking about is like some of the townspeople who were kind of on the fence might have seen an exchange and then went and told the Inquisitors and been like,
right.
I don't want my family to get hurt, but I just want you guys to know that like he's over there, like, kind of point him out. But
yeah, they're offering credits and
yeah, man.
Hey, that's good money, right?
That's some good money. And why would you care about these crazy telekinetic people?
The Empire tells everyone that the Jedi, they were trying to overthrow them. They were traitors. So
yeah, exactly. So
why would you help them?
We're talking about Reva here, who is in that first scene. I kind of talked about the Order 66. She's a youngling, or was a youngling back during Order 66.
Yeah, we don't know that right away, but you put it together easily because you see a little girl at the very beginning. And I remember thinking that, oh, she's a little girl. Because we have this frame of mind because we've played Jedi Fallen Order. But people who haven't might not put that together right away.
Sure. And I guess and maybe people wouldn't think about it like I did, but I was like, all right, the first shot of this show called Kenobi has nothing to do with Kenobi. And I was like, why would you show that? It's not just to be cool. There's a reason. And then it's like, okay, later on, that's the reason. And you're like, okay, all right, cool. So yeah, you put it together and you find out that she was stabbed originally by Anakin and survived and then got turned into being an Inquisitor at some point later on. I'm sure they'll flesh that out eventually, but they don't do that on the show.
And she's a very kind of stubborn Inquisitor where her boss, the Grand Inquisitor, is always yelling at her. And so is the other guy, the fifth brother. He's like, knock it off. Like you're stepping out of line. And like she even chops a woman's hand off at one point.
She does. She's kind of a loose cannon, basically.
Yes.
Yeah, very much so. And it's like, okay, I get it. And she has a lot of rage. The thing that's interesting about her is that her whole plan is to like do this for a certain amount of time until she gets her moment to like stab Vader in the back, because all she wants to do is lure him out. She's not really after Kenobi. Yeah. It's more like
she wants to rise in rank and then get close to Vader. That way she can take him out.
Yeah, and her whole point is like, at first you're like, oh, she hates Kenobi because he wasn't there to help with Order 66. And of course, like, I don't know why she can't put two and two together that maybe he was under assault as well.
Yeah, maybe I was being hunted down too, lady.
It's
Come
like,
on.
Just show that shot of him at Utapau getting blasted with his lizard buddy.
It'd been funny if he just said, like, I was busy.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, I was very busy at the time.
Yeah. That whole kind of, you find out later on that that's the whole point. And I was like, man, this is like your plan to kill Vader. And and full disclosure, everyone, I am a massive Darth Vader fan. And not that owning a bunch of Darth Vader paraphernalia or having wallpapers on my computer makes it like, oh, that like justifies me as a fan. I'm just a really big fan of Vader. But I've also thought, if I were to try to take Darth Vader down, how would I do it? And I don't know. I would have like 4 or 5 backups put into my plan. Because no matter what, your first idea is probably not going to work. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, if you're going to assassinate Darth Vader, you better come with like
her plan was terrible. Let's face it. It was not a good plan.
No, it's too bad because I'm like, okay, I can kind of sympathize, or I'm like, okay, I can see where she hates this guy. She wants her revenge, but there are other ways in which to do it. And we're covering a lot of the show here, but like basically that moment that she gets where she's going to attack him, Vader's like, I saw this coming a mile away. I knew you were the little girl I stabbed. Like, I knew that this was going to happen at some point. I'm using you, even though Obi's using you now to like kill me, which I was thinking for a moment too, like, what if she had succeeded in an alternate timeline, killed Vader? Like, would Obi feel bad at all? He's like, I sent someone else to do my dirty work. Like, he's like, you go finish what I started. But that
I just think Reva's an interesting part of the show that we didn't know we were going to deal with. She comes off as a really bad person. You can't wait to get killed when they first introduce her.
Sure.
And then they try to kind of spell out more about her that becomes more interesting over time.
Yeah.
And I like that much. So much towards, like, if we're just skipping around here, towards the end when Darth Vader figures her out and he stabs her or whatever. I'm not sure how she lived through that. And I'm not sure how she got back to Tatooine like that.
Right.
And I'm not even sure what her plan is in that final episode. Did you ever say during that final episode, like, what is she doing?
I was confused because, after her fight with Vader, and we'll get specifically in about the fights, it kind of like there, you're like, okay, she's kind of, she's done with Vader, but she finds out that Luke, through this transmission that Bail Organa had sent to Obi-Wan.
Yeah, by the way, hey, Bail, use code words or something.
What's
wrong with you?
The thing is, like, I get they have to move the plot in a certain direction. I'm just like, Bail, come on, man. Like, you used to be so clandestine, and now it's just freaking dropping the ball.
I'm going to meet you at your apartment on Tatooine, your hideout. All right, it's the one next to Anchorhead. Yeah, I'm going to meet you there, okay? It's like, oh, I know exactly where he is now.
Yeah.
It's like,
it's weird. I was thinking the point was, for her to go there was to be like, oh, this kid, whoever he is really important to Vader. And if I kill the kid, it'll be like, haha, Vader, I killed this kid that's important to you. And I was thinking, like, that's your plan? I was like, because right there, like, if you showed Vader that, he would be like, I didn't know I had a kid.
It. I mean, I don't like when shows kind of treat us like idiots, like they spell everything out. But at that point, I was like, what is she doing? What is her plan?
No, exactly.
I don't know.
Yeah. Oh, no, totally. And that's why I was confused. Because, yeah, you're right. I totally agree. I don't want everything laid out in front of me, but I also don't want it to be so ambiguous where I'm like, what? Yeah.
Yeah.
So she has the opportunity to kill Luke. She doesn't take it because, she looks at Luke and she sympathizes, empathizes. It's like, man, I was a youngling once and I probably shouldn't, like, stab this child.
I didn't like getting stabbed when I was a kid.
Yeah. When I was a kid, it wasn't great. So she spares him, and you're like, okay, yeah, she has to spare him, right? But
by the way, Uncle Owen, Aunt Beru, they stepped up.
They did step up. I thought they were gonna have more of a plan. Like, I was like, okay, so they've got like some explosives somewhere. I'm like, if someone's coming to kill Luke, and you're pretty sure it's like some sort of kind of pseudo Jedi, I'd be like, all right, we're gonna have some. I would have so many traps. I would Home Alone it, man. I would Home Alone it so hard.
How cool would it have been if they just said something like, get the Wampa net or something, something that they have to deal with there on Tatooine. They have some kind of trap set up for Tusken Raiders, but they use it on her or something.
Yeah, it would have to. What would it be? A Bantha net?
Yeah, a Bantha net.
Get the Bantha net.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, that would be great. But yeah, so they kind of do all that stuff, and it's like it kind of leads kind of to nowhere, but it kind of gives her pseudo redemption maybe. And I'm really thinking that there's a chance that they've got this idea for her own spin-off show, and
for
that
Reva.
Yeah, and that maybe they're going to try to explore way more with her in something else. Did you get that vibe too?
Yeah, she's going to show up again somewhere. Like, I was wondering, like, I didn't know, but I was almost wondering if, like, Obi-Wan's like, don't worry, Luke will be fine. And they show, like, Reva, like, sitting in the hills, like, with her, binoculars, just keeping an eye or something.
Yeah,
I don't know. Like, he's got people working in shifts now. I don't know.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like, all right, if you find out about Luke, then you got to stay. You got to hang out.
Here's what there needs to be: a panic button there on the homestead. And it needs to go directly to a watch on Obi-Wan. And Obi-Wan needs to get rid of the Eope thing, whatever that's called, and get like a swoop bike so he can get there quickly.
Get there quick. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then he just finds out that Luke was just being naughty and was tampering with something. And he's like,
he was smoking death sticks again.
Leave me alone, Obi. I found this weird cave. I used to live in this cave. Yeah, no, you didn't.
That's why it smells terrible. It's like, ooh, burn.
My real dad would never sleep in a cave. Or something. You're like, why are you talking about this?
Your father is dead. Oh my God. Obi-Wan, you've gone too far.
He's dead, and I'm pretty sure. But actually, no, not anymore. Yeah, so that's the Reva stuff. And And I don't know. It's
Yeah.
it's so curious because I want to know what they want to do with her in the future. Because
What's funny is the Inquisitors come off to me as kind of like they're all kind of vying for a better position under Darth Vader,
totally.
and Darth Vader doesn't give a crap about any of them.
No, he
is
does
the
not
way I feel.
care. No, he doesn't care about anybody. I think the only one he cares about really right now are like Obi and the Emperor. Like those are the two people, and everybody else he's like, I don't care.
Right.
But yeah, it's an interesting show. Like I don't know, they they do this thing where there are like these moments where like I stood up and was cheering when he fought Reva because the way he fought Reva was so like the way I thought that character would tackle it. Because there's this moment later on where Obi's escaping with all these people and they're just out of reach, and Vader and Reva show up to get him. And Reva kind of set it up where she would get her chance to attack Vader, and she does. And he's like, yeah, I saw it coming, and they have a fight. And he's sitting there, and she's like swinging at him, and he's just force pushing her around, and like he's like, it's not even a thing. And then
he's just toying with her.
And then they do the thing, which I was so happy to see. It's kind of Grievous-like because all the Inquisitors have this kind of like double-sided helicopter spinning style lightsaber that they can wield, and it can start spinning around. It's really scary. But for Vader, he doesn't care. And like she's using this, and it's like he's like whatever, and takes it from her, breaks it apart, and he has two lightsabers for 1 second. And my brain broke because I was like, I'd never thought of Darth Vader with two lightsabers. I don't know why, but I saw that. I was like, amazing. And then he did that thing I love seeing in like movies and TV where he takes one of them and like he throws it to her on the ground like, all right, you want to fight? Let's do it. Because that's like
you want to tussle?
It's the biggest power move you can do because like usually in fights, it's like it's so like back and forth, and then when the person gets the opportunity, they win. But this is like, I have the opportunity. Like, I'm still gonna give you a chance to keep fighting.
This is what you've planned your whole life for, to fight me. Let's go. And it's just like, oh, this isn't like how I pictured in my head.
Exactly. And just him being like so confident. He's like, I'm going to give you part of your weapon back if you really think you can take me, when you had both of them a second ago and you still couldn't fight me. I'm like, oh, and he doesn't even use his own lightsaber. It's like so great. And I was like, yes, that whole thing for me. And then when we finally get the true fight between Obi and Vader, because they do have a little kind of back and forth in this quarry kind of thing where Obi kind of runs around in the dark and Vader chases after him.
Obi-Wan's just running scared. And by the way, that scene where he's hiding in that room looking out the window and you just see Darth Vader walking up and he's kind of like toying with people, and he kills a kid by snapping his neck and dragging a lady along the ground. It just, the way Ewan McGregor sells the horror in his face, kind of like, that used to be my friend, and he's this monster now.
I'm so happy you brought that up, because that was like when the show for me really kicked into high gear, because I was so excited to see Vader in all his glory because he looks so good, and he starts doing this stuff. And I thought like when he first brought that person up with the Force, and you know they're in that town and Obi's hiding, I thought he was going to be like, come out, Obi, you know, or something like to that level. And he does it, and he just starts snapping necks and dragging people around. And I was like, oh my gosh. I was like, yes. And it kind of escalated that kind of like running around. I wasn't as big a fan of like the running around the quarry sequence, but when Vader finally got a hold of him and starts dragging him through like the this kind of debris that he sets on fire, like this kind of flammable material, and he starts like basically making him suffer. I was like, that's because Vader doesn't want to kill him. And I loved that. I was like, this is great. And I was like, this is good.
I love the realization. Also, Obi-Wan, he sees him for the first time, and he's like in the Darth Vader outfit. And he's like, what happened to you? And he's like, I am what you made me. Because you realize that Darth Vader takes no responsibility for anything that happened to him. He blames it all on Obi-Wan.
Yeah.
And he wants to burn him back.
Oh, exactly. And I think the reveal at the end of the second episode where Reva tells Obi, I would have rather had that have been Vader in that sequence where like Obi's like, man, this guy has got it out for me. I have absolutely no idea who he is. And they start fighting, and then he says something that kind of clues Obi off, and he'd be like, Anakin? And like, you know, that would have been like, oh my gosh, like in that moment. That would have been
cool.
That would have been so cool. And we kind of do get it later on when they do have their final big fight, which looks great. They don't, They made a choice with the kind of the camera movement and the kind of the shakiness of the whole thing, and which is fine. It was just like a different artistic way to approach it.
A lot of it's feels handheld.
Exactly. I miss just like the static, like, and I grew up not only original trilogy but prequel trilogy where like I know these guys can fight, so I'm like, you could put a camera somewhere and do like a wide shot or a medium shot, and it'll be fine. It'll look really good.
Don't get overly cute. Just let them fight and let us see it.
Yeah, because they can do it, and they do some of their old tricks and moves and stances that you see from the prequels, and I'm like, oh, that's so good. And that fight sequence is pretty great, and you start
when Obi-Wan does the point stance.
The point stance, we love it. It's so good. Great callback. But we do get like some kind of exaggerated force powers, which I was happy to see. We see Vader kind of make like the ground disappear underneath Obi-Wan and bury him.
Well, what's funny is when Obi-Wan wants the big pillar to fall on him, he's just like, oh, you got your powers back.
Yeah.
Push. And he just like launches like a mile away. And it's like, but you're still not as powerful as me.
Yeah. It's like, he says something, he's like, oh, you're strong with the Force, but you still are weak or something like that. And I was like, oh, it's so good. And
then he buries Obi-Wan alive, basically.
Well, and I saw someone else talk about this, and I was like, oh, would it have been too on the nose for Vader standing over Obi-Wan to say, it's over, Master. I have the high ground. Like,
I would have laughed out loud and been like, that's a great line for that spot. That would have been good.
They could still do it. That's the thing, is you could edit that in still, because like you don't see Vader's lips move or anything. That would have been perfect to just be so vengeful. So
when Vader was burying him, I was like, oh, he's just using cheese tactics now. Just fight him saber to saber, you know?
Yeah, and there's a lot in this show of like very James Bond villainy, like they're probably dead, and like kind of walk away. And I'm like, you gotta like, maybe Star Wars confirming kills is not a thing. I'm like, you gotta gotta know.
Obi-Wan, what pulls him out of that in using the Force and pushing the rocks is just thinking of Luke and Leia gets him out of there.
Yeah.
But I love the fact that he's running up behind Darth Vader. He's not like, hey, I'm still alive, come on. But he's like, I'm going to go hit him right now while he's not looking.
And chop his head off. That's what it felt like. Yeah, exactly. And that was great. And then we get that kind of the continuation of that fight where Obi is going like just crazy on Vader. Does like that whole, he picks up like 1,000 rocks and starts whipping Vader. I was like, it was getting to that point where I'm like, oh man, we're almost at Force Unleashed levels. Like, it's like, okay, here we go.
I love that shot where he's just like, dun, and all the rocks go like behind him. And it's like, whoa. Because Obi-Wan, even in the prequels, doesn't really use that much Force power.
No.
He mostly fights with his lightsaber.
Yeah, he's very defensive. His play style is very defensive. And then
he's like, oh, I got cheese tactics too, dude.
Yeah. And then he finally gets that kind of slice on Vader's helmet, and we get to see Anakin underneath, or, you know, what used to be Anakin. And it's
I do love that strained breathing Darth Vader sound that they use.
It makes me so sad, dude. Like it's like when I'm playing Monster Hunter and I see the monster start to limp away. Like there's like a shift, like a 180 in me that's like, this guy is the worst. And then I'm like, oh, what a poor baby.
You realize that Darth Vader's only as strong as his suit is protecting him.
Yeah, exactly. And that like when Obi starts to realize, okay, this is the moment, I need to go for the suit. And then when the suit starts getting messed up, he's going to have problems. And
when he sees him suffering inside that suit, kind of like part of his face, Ewan McGregor sells it so well that just his teary eyes, he's like, I am so sorry, Anakin.
Yeah.
It's just like, Anakin's dead.
Yeah, and he says that whole thing where he's like, and I killed him, and I'm gonna destroy you too. And there's that fun little like his eye that you see is like it's kind of in the blue for a second, but then it goes full red when like Vader quote unquote starts talking, and his voice modulator keeps switching between him, Anakin, and Vader. And it's so cool. Weird, and it's so cool. The thing is, we've seen this before. It was I believe in Force Unleashed where you get that kind of like helmet kind of reveal a little bit, but then they also did it in Rebels a lot where Ahsoka fights Vader and then cuts off a part. And
Ahsoka then does the exact same thing and is like, Anakin? Because they did that in Star Wars Rebels where she didn't know who Darth Vader was.
Exactly. So maybe that's why they didn't want to do what I was suggesting earlier, but I still think it would be cooler for Obi to kind of be like, oh, I think that could be him, and then have this be the moment where he's like, oh my God, like I should have like force pushed you into the lava, buddy. Like I'm so sorry. Like
basically he bests Vader here because he gets his confidence back and realizes that he needs the Force and he needs to be the best he is to protect Luke and Leia or whatever. And he could probably take out Vader here, but it's almost like the same thing Vader did with Reva, or I even think if the Emperor did with Darth Maul in that episode of the Clone Wars.
yeah.
It's almost like, you're so pathetic, I'm just gonna leave. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it kind of frustrates me because like this whole like leaving them alive, and again, it's an in-betweequel or whatever. And
yeah, we know he can't kill Darth Vader here.
I just wish there was a different way that they could have ended it, because he kind of says dismissively like, "Oh, whatever, Darth," and you kind of is like, "See you later." And
How about right when he's going to kill Darth Vader, the Grand Inquisitor and another Inquisitor shows up, and Obi-Wan's just like, "Okay, I'm out of here," and he takes off.
That would have been cool. Yeah, that'd be. And you know what? Jason. Okay, see, you already get my brain spinning. So I'm like, okay, you do that, and then you have like the Grand Inquisitor save Vader, and then you get this thing where if you do a Vader TV show, the Grand Inquisitor is like, he sees that Vader is not invulnerable, and he's like, maybe I could be the top dog. Yeah. Like I saved him from Obi-Wan at that one time, remember? And he's thinking the whole time like, I could be the main dude. Like
what about this? As they show up and Obi-Wan takes off, and you see like the fifth brother, he's kind of cocking his head at Vader. He's just like, I could take him out right now. Yeah. And Vader all of a sudden goes, and a blade goes right through the guy, and he's like, did you really think I didn't see it? So just like he said to Reva, like
yeah, exactly. Like all the Inquisitors are out to get him. Yeah, totally. Something like that would be excellent. I think would be so cool. So yeah, I'm right there with you. That would. Jason, see, look, immediately you have a great idea there. It's not a horrible way to end it, where he just kind of is like, I'm not gonna deal with this. He just kind of says at the beginning of this episode, he's like, I'm gonna get back there. I want to do this. I'm gonna finish what I started.
I do like when he says, you know, Anakin's dead and I killed him or whatever. He's like, you know, you didn't kill Anakin, I did. Obi-Wan says, okay, well, bye, Darth. Whatever,
yeah, exactly.
You know?
Yeah. So that way it's a little less weird in A New Hope when he calls him Darth. You're like, oh, okay.
Really master of evil, Darth.
Yeah.
Because also you get the idea there that when he tells Luke that your father was murdered by a man called Darth Vader, he's not lying. He's pretty much telling him what Anakin said to him, that, hey, Anakin's dead and I killed him.
From a certain point of view, you know.
From a certain point of view?
Luke's just like, how? Okay. All right.
Well, also, can I just say poor young Luke didn't have much to do, and like Leia stole the limelight from him.
See, I'm just saying that they're trying to balance it out. I get it. That's because you know, Leia was important here and Luke's very important in the original trilogy. They're balancing it out. It's all right.
I liked young Leia and the way they their little camaraderie. It kind of got lost in the middle kind of episodes where they kind of had more going on, but
yeah.
I just want to talk about the episode where they go to Inquisitorius. What is that place called?
I'll have to look it up. It was like Sanctum Inquisitorius or something like that.
That whole scene where he finds the Jedi like all in amber, like Jurassic Park, you know, like a mosquito in amber. I thought that was awesome and horrific. I also love the character of Tala. She was great. The undercover Imperial.
Yeah, the one like the potential future flame for Obi that just goes out pretty quick.
Yeah. She died in a dramatic fashion. May the Force be with you. And he's like, no, boom, whatever. When that happened, I was like, couldn't she have just thrown the grenade? Or okay, you know, it was time for her to go out.
Dude, okay, that's the problem with thermal detonators. Maybe they're in short supply, but I feel like for a lot of people, like if you were going to, I don't know, maybe they're harder to get. But I'm thinking like if you're gonna try to kill Vader, or if you're gonna try to kill Reva, or if you're gonna try to kill anybody in Star Wars, I feel like thermal detonators are like a really solid way to do it, right? Like, because they seem to be pretty powerful. It's like, and you're like, whoa.
Yeah, they are. She took out like 50 stormtroopers there.
Took it out, yeah, a lot.
The thing I really like, we were talking about, I really like this show and everything. I thought it was great. There's sometimes where things are just goofy.
Yeah,
and one of them is that that when they're fighting off all the troopers and stuff, and Obi-Wan's like, "No way, I know what to do." Anakin has to win, so I'm going to turn myself in. And so he goes out and turns himself into Riva, but he ends up just coming right back. It's just kind of goofy how that happened. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I was also wondering because he's like, all right, set up a meeting, and they shoot to later on. I think it's like the Death Trooper captain is like up at the door, like kind of listening, and then they kind of like runs back and is like relays the information. I was thinking like, how did they get him to stop shooting at the door like long enough to be like?
And also that scene, they're shooting at the door trying to get it open, and then Riva talks to Obi-Wan, and she gets pissed off and just stabs her saber through it and cuts the door open anyway. And I'm like, wait, her lightsaber opened it, but the giant cannon couldn't do
I know.
it?
When they first finished, she's like, we gotta shoot this door. I was like, you have a skeleton key on your belt and you can use it. Like, go stab the door.
Here's another part I thought was goofy. They're chasing all of them in the Star Destroyer. They're forever like, okay, put the deflector shield in the back and we can hold them off for a while. We're trying to fix the hyperdrive. And Obi-Wan's like, well, I need to go. They'll follow me. And they're like, no, don't do that. And he's like, yes, I got to. Well, meanwhile, on the Star Destroyer, Darth Vader's like, we must follow Obi-Wan. And he's like, sir, we must follow them because if they get away, we'll never find them again. I think we should follow them. And he's like, no, we're following Obi-Wan. They're like, okay. So they follow Obi-Wan. And he's like, bring me my shuttle and I will follow it. And it's like, why didn't you just do the shuttle then and follow him? And we could have gone that way. Just stuff like that kind of drove me crazy.
Yeah, I know what you mean. There's like a lot of things in the episodes where this is the thing, man. I feel like when they said, it's a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, maybe it's just they don't apply logically to the same rules we do here, right? So maybe some of this stuff is just lost on them, like they don't think to do it.
Yeah.
And I get where it's like maybe it's just like storytelling or whatever else. But I know what you mean because like I think we have such a suspension of disbelief for a lot of this stuff in the first place that the kind of the nuts and bolts of situations start to really bother us when it builds up too much, where you're like, you shouldn't be thinking about this. You shouldn't be like, why is this happening? Like,
that's why stuff like that, when it pulls me out of it, I get a little annoyed. It's like, you guys could have done this tighter, Yeah. I shouldn't be thinking about this right now. I should be thinking about the camaraderie between Obi-Wan, and he's trying to protect Leia, and then he's got to sacrifice himself to save her. And then he needs to face Darth Vader. But instead I'm thinking about like, why didn't they just separate ships? Don't they have TIE fighters aboard? Like, we're the TIE fighters right now. I shouldn't be thinking about stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So it's curious. It is curious because it's like these shows, and I wonder too, like I'm so curious to know what the timeline is on some of these things when they make them, because it seems like they're making so much stuff right now to put on Disney Plus that maybe some of this stuff, had it been like a 2.5 hour film, you wouldn't have these things that you're thinking about because it would be so much tighter, and it wouldn't be like, oh, we didn't have to worry about that because that scene wasn't in here, or they never went to the Fortress Inquisitorius or whatever, like stuff like that. But which, side note, that place needs to get some better glass, because between this and Jedi Fallen Order, man, like if anybody inadvertently shoots one of those windows,
that's
got problems.
Another thing. It's like that moment with the glass was like, did they just finish playing Jedi Fallen Order? Like, dude, he swims the same way to the place, and then there's the part with the glass. But I mean, it's okay. I thought it was kind of cool, but also it was so heavily influenced by that, wasn't it?
It seems to be. It seems that way for sure. And again, I wonder if it's just that like most of the people watching this probably never played through Jedi Fallen Order, or if they did, they maybe never got to the ending sequence where he goes there, and that was never a consideration. But yeah, I just think like, okay, just make a different fortress somewhere else and give them different problems to have, like.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stuff in this that I liked, and I loved. Different references and stuff didn't drive me nuts or anything like that. There is the one reference at the end, though, that I was like, yes! And you know what that is, right?
Oh, are we talking about the big guy himself? Oh, you mean at the very end with like...
where he's like, would you like to meet him? To meet Luke.
Yep. They had to do it.
And I'm like, what is he going to say? What's this going to be like? What's going to happen? How is this little repartee going to go? But he's just like, hello there. I love that, the simplicity of that. And I did enjoy that a lot.
If you watch that and then watch how he says it in Revenge of the Sith, that's just like his acting right there too, because he says it in a different way. He doesn't say it exactly the same way because it's a different person. He's not trying to be a cocky jerk like he is in Revenge of the Sith.
Right.
In this, he's just kind of like, hello there, like kind of like, hello, little boy, like kind of thing.
What was funny is I even explained to Heather, I was like, when I was like, oh, they did it like there. And she's like, what? And I'm like, that's the first thing Obi-Wan says in Star Wars. He says it to R2-D2. He says, hello there.
Oh my gosh, I had forgotten about that. I always think of it as the Revenge of the Sith line, but yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a callback.
Oh, it's a callback and a callback.
Multiple callbacks.
So many callbacks. I thought you were referring to the lovely Ian McDiarmid coming back as Emperor Palpatine, baby. Oh, yes. I was like, look at him. There he is. I was like,
I love he's like, perhaps you're dwelling on this too much because he kicked your ass, Lord Vader. It's like, oh, I gotta go. Hangs up on him.
That's one of my favorite things.
It'd be funny if the Emperor's just like, oh, he got you good, didn't he? He's just like getting him really fired up.
See, that's the thing about their relationship, though. Like, unlike many, many Jedi as well, master-apprentice relationships, like, the way that Emperor Palpatine has always typically spoken to Anakin is as a friend or as, like, a confidant. It's not really, we haven't seen it so much where it's like, you are mine, like, you work for me. And I think a lot of it is purposeful because he's like, yeah, this guy, like, he might be kind of messed up now, but, like, I don't really want to mess with him because he's still very scary. Like, he's still a very scary person. So
it's not until Return of the Jedi that in front of Darth Vader and he's trying to he's basically telling Luke it's hopeless, that he's like, your father's mine and you will be mine too. Like that's when he's like really saying it.
Yeah. That's decades of abuse though finally set in. It's like when they're talking. One of my favorite scenes in all Star Wars is Return of the Jedi, and Vader clicks on the green lightsaber. It's like, oh, you construct your own lightsaber, and Luke's like, you don't have to do this. Like, you can come with me. And he's like, I'm sorry, it's too late for me. Like, I work for him now. And it's like, aw, it's like, poor Vader.
The scene in Return of the Jedi where, the father, please, and he's like electrocuting him and everything, and you just see Darth Vader kind of like, maybe. He kind of turns and looks at the Emperor, and then looks back at Luke, and he's like getting electrocuted. I saw that in Westwood in California. In LA where you live now.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a packed theater opening day. Cool. And that scene where he grabs the Emperor, it was deafeningly loud. Like everyone was like, ah! I remember just like you couldn't even hear the movie. People were like freaking out. And he picks up the Emperor and he like throws him down. I just remember like that was the most like goosebumps all over your body, like hair raising on the back of your neck moment I've ever seen in a movie. And just like the entire audience was flipping out.
Yeah. That's because it was distilled down to pure redemption for a character in one maneuver. Like, not that it erases every bad thing he's ever done, but you're like, wow, not only did he break the cycle of abuse, but he did it, saved his son, like saved the galaxy in one maneuver. And you're like, yeah, that's pretty great. It's very cool. But
until Rise of Skywalker, where Poe Dameron says somehow Palpatine returned.
Dude, Poe is force sensitive and he knows. He's like, somehow he's back. Don't you even worry about it.
We just put it in the script, guys. Just go along with us. Okay.
I love Oscar Isaac. I really do.
Yeah, he worked with what he had there.
I love him. I like to imagine him reading that and he's like, wait, what? I have to say this? Like, do I know? Does anyone know? And they're like, no, nobody knows. He's just back. And it's like, okay. All right.
I gotta say, this entire Obi-Wan series, it was worth it for that final duel between them.
Yeah.
And
yeah, I agree.
The broken Anakin behind the Darth Vader mask, that whole scene, I think Ewan McGregor sold it totally.
Yeah.
That was probably my favorite moment in the whole series, but also my favorite moment towards the end was when he is saying goodbye to Leia and he says, before you asked about your parents, I did know your parents. And he basically says all these qualities you got from your mother. and then all these qualities you got from your father.
Yeah.
And they were both dear friends of. I thought that was really well done, that whole scene.
I'm happy too that like they didn't cheap out and just say like all the good things about you are from your mom and some of the bad things you've got, well, that's your dad. It's like, no, he said really nice things about him, and I was like, oh, that's fairly nice. Like,
there's a cruel streak in you, and I know where you get that.
Yeah. Okay.
No, but like he remembers his friend Anakin now.
Yeah.
You know, like he's not just the guy who killed the younglings. That was Darth Vader. He was consumed by the dark side, you know, and his friend that he loved is gone. And that friend was a good person.
And, you know, you could still make the case that one of the reasons besides just Padme was Leia and Luke that Anakin was doing all this. He didn't know there'd be two kids, but he's like, man, I got to do everything I can to protect my family. And I think that makes it a little more understandable why he went so insanely crazy and evil. Like, it was like, okay. But it also had kind of been bubbling for a while, and he kind of wanted an excuse to mess up Mace Windu and stuff. But, yeah, I like that.
I would have totally retconned all this where Obi-Wan was their father, and you find that out. Just totally blow everyone's mind, like, what? And flashbacks with Padme.
Oh my gosh, people would be so frustrated.
Having an affair behind Anakin's back. Oh my god, it would have been great.
No, okay, I take back what I said earlier. I don't think you should be running it. No.
Wait, you messed up everything.
No, I was gonna say, okay, quick question. Like, maybe people know this. People are listening to this. Maybe you know this, Jason. Does Bail Organa know? Like, I think not everybody knows about Darth Vader, because like I think some people like to think that everyone knows about Vader, but it seems like he shows up at places and people just know he's from the Empire. They don't necessarily know him as much until later on. But does Bail know it's Anakin?
I have no idea.
Because if so, like it's good to know. But then he would, you know, because he's still a senator, that he might run into this guy once in a while. But that it would be kind of weird. But if he doesn't, I feel like Obi should have been like, when he's shaking his head, be like, oh yeah, not a big thing. But Leia's biological father, Anakin, you remember him from 10 years ago. I thought I killed him. I told you guys I had killed him. And believe it or not, he's alive. So just be watching out for that. You know what I mean? It's like,
right.
So that's where you could kind of tie it in maybe more so now. Like, if you do a Vader show, you could have Vader and Bail kind of know about each other, and that's one of the reasons why Vader kind of like lets Alderaan get blown up, because he's like, yeah, that guy sucked. Like, he took my kid. It's like, except he doesn't know about Leia. Like, I don't know. It's weird.
I love that basically Darth Vader doesn't know about Leia for the longest time.
Yeah, until Return of the Jedi, right?
Right, until Return of the Jedi. And he didn't. I mean, obviously he knew who Luke was because they kept the last name they kept Skywalker as his last name. When the guy who blew up the Death Star becomes famous, it's Luke Skywalker. He's the guy who did it. I mean, he knew that guy's related to me. That's my son or whatever.
Yeah.
But they kept Leia better hidden because they changed her name, you know, her last name.
Yeah.
Leia Skywalker. I think she might be related to me, you know. It's just like, they probably should have changed Luke's last name, but that's besides the point. I'm just saying, this is like getting into weird nitpicky stuff. I don't think they should have changed Luke's name. I love it. Everything the way it is. I just think it's kind of funny if you analyze it that way.
Well, it's been going on for so long. It's like kind of a victim of its own success, where you have things like in the show where like Leia as a child can like rewire a blaster door, but then in Return of the Jedi, when they really need to like rewire a blaster door to get into like the shield generator thing, she can't do it. It's like stuff like that where you're like, it's just been going on so long. It's so hard to consider everything like that, you know? And
also, most movies are made to be watched maybe once, maybe twice. But these films, everyone watches over and over and over again, and we all know everything. And it's kind of like, it's impossible to make something that's mistake proof or doesn't kind of step over itself and other things. It's just impossible.
Yeah, it's just too hard. And you know, when you think about it too, like that first movie was not set out, you know, to make it a franchise. It was like George Lucas had this idea and he wanted to make it and see if it worked, and then it was like, all right, now we're doing like 2 and 3, and then it was like, and then it just kind of blew up.
There was one thing going on Twitter when the show started that drove me nuts, is like, wait a second, how does this guy look like this guy in only 10 years. And it was a picture of Alec
Oh,
Guinness
sure.
and Ewan McGregor. And I love the sarcastic response some people do is like, because it's a different actor.
Yeah, right. It's like,
stop trying to be cheeky. It's a different actor.
Yeah, it's okay. It's all right. We can all explain it away. It's like when he's going to be hanging out with Qui-Gon in the sequel, like the more time you force ghosts hang out, you get older. It's just, that's how it works.
Plus, you have to admit, Obi-Wan's living a pretty stressful life.
He is living a stressful life, which I touched on it there at the very end, which I thought was going to be earlier on. It was nice to see him. It was nice to see Qui-Gon for just a second. It was like, oh, yeah, there he is.
He kept like kind of talking to Qui-Gon, like, please, Qui-Gon, I need your help. And
yeah,
I love that he finally shows up at the end. And I was like, Qui-Gon, yeah. And he's like, I've been here the whole time. I would have been like, you jerk.
Yeah, right.
You've been here the whole time.
I watched you in those firefights, Obi. I didn't think you liked blasters. And Obi's just like, I know, I'm not supposed to like blasters.
How cool was that, though, that we got to see Obi-Wan blast some guys with a blaster?
I wanted him so badly at one point to just say, like, at first I kind of hated blasters, but they've grown on me. It's like
and
a
then
lightsaber at a distance.
Swirls it on his finger.
Yeah, just,
like,
yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah, he's like, you think I was just sitting out there for 10 years doing nothing? He's like, I've been do a little blaster practice. And that'd be great.
I also love that Obi-Wan blames himself for all of this for the longest time. He blames himself for everything that happened to Anakin. And do you almost get the feeling when Anakin says, well, Darth Vader says, you didn't kill Anakin, I did. He's kind of like saying, hey, stop blaming yourself, man. I did this to myself.
They both carry a lot about each other, and that's clearly why neither of them was willing to commit to a kill. They still love each other deeply. They just can't say it.
Is that what the Emperor is getting to at the end? He's like,
totally.
Are you in love with this guy? What's going on?
Yeah, it's like, are you still best buds? And he's like, no, you're my only master now. I don't even want to talk about Obi-Wan anymore. And it's just like,
your thoughts dwell on your former master. No, shut up.
And then he just looks at the hologram thing and he's like, all right, so like, here's the deal. We had all these cool adventures together during the Clone Wars and like, we got pretty close. Like, I didn't have a dad. All right. Like, my mom just had me and I didn't have a dad. And the first one I got, he got stabbed in the stomach and that killed him. But lightsaber stabs usually don't kill people, so I don't know why he died. But he's dead,
The Grand Inquisitor and Reva both survived lightsaber stabs.
Yeah.
Qui-Gon didn't.
Qui-Gon wanted out.
Was it a little to the right?
It was a little to the right. And no, I think he wanted
major arteries.
He's like, I want to be a Force ghost. Or maybe one thing I saw, a fun theory, was like when he was doing the meditation in between the fight with Maul, was like maybe he foresaw his death. Or saw that this was the best path to lead to like Luke eventually becoming like the guy, or Vader, whatever else. And I was like, okay, that's kind of a stretch, but it's kind of like a nice little fan theory to be like, oh yeah, like, oh, he was like, I need to die here. Whereas like even Maul, who got chopped in half, came back, or the Emperor exploded and he came back. It's like comic books. It's like everyone who dies doesn't die. Like they'll come back. So don't worry about it. Everybody who dies in Star Wars will come back. So Kylo Ren in episode 10. Ooh, that rhymed. You're welcome.
When Obi-Wan says, if you strike me down, I'll become more powerful than you can possibly imagine. What he means is as a guide to the real chosen one, your son, who will eventually take you down.
See,
it's like you can set up things to mean one thing at one time and become something else.
Totally. Yeah.
When like Qui-Gon needed to die at that moment because it needed to be put in Obi-Wan's hands to train Anakin. Qui-Gon's not a major part of that story anymore. He needs to be out of the picture.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. I thought for sure, though, by the way, that Obi was going to be dual-wielding Anakin's lightsaber in that final fight. I thought he was going to grab and ignite the other one and go, like, with two of them at Vader.
Hey, remember this?
Yeah.
That's mine!
Yeah, Anakin, he's like, that doesn't belong to you. Like, that really frustrates him.
I would have been like Kylo Ren. That belongs to me.
Yeah, which is so funny because I've seen a few times, like, it depends on which era you see that lightsaber, because like it'll be like it's Luke's lightsaber, it's Anakin's, it's Rey's, and I'm like it's everybody's lightsaber, I guess now. Like it was originally Anakin's, but like
it's a hand me down.
It's a hand me. Does everybody? It's also kind of bulky. Have you guys ever held or looked at that version of it? There's like some weird stuff in there that makes it really unwieldy. So,
yeah, real stuff sticking into your hand uncomfortably.
Yeah, it's not. It might be iconic. It's like the Millennium Falcon. It's iconic, but it's an interesting design.
Everything has character.
It has character, yes. Agreed. But yeah, I would say the show is definitely worth watching, at least for the fight scenes, alone. I'm not trying to wave away some of the nuts and bolts, like we said before, as far as like, why didn't they do this or logically or whatever. But I try to think of like, if I were in situations similar, not exactly the same as in Star Wars, would I make logical decisions in a really bad moment? Maybe not.
Right.
But who knows? I don't know. I've not been in the Star Wars, so. But yeah, like I was saying, I think this show is worth it, at least for the fights and whatnot, especially if you like, just seeing some great Vader action. I want Vader to have his own show. And Jason, as I've said, in the past, and you alluded to it earlier, yeah, I live out in Los Angeles now. And to be honest, I want more Star Wars things, because there's a greater chance then that I get to be in a Star Wars thing, fighting alongside my beloved Darth Vader, who I would be the most devout little Sith Inquisitor. I would never ever try to hurt him. I would be like, yeah, Vader, whatever you want, buddy.
Plus, as a Sith Inquisitor, you don't want to kind of be noticed, because once you fail,
you're done.
He's gonna kill you. So it's best to not be noticeable and just kind of hang in the background.
No, I want him to just be like, you did well on that last mission. And then he goes away.
He looks in your direction and you just look like you're kind of filing papers away. Like, oh, look busy.
And he just nods, just like, he must be working hard.
Yeah.
That would be amazing. Yeah. I love Vader. I really want him to get his own show. I could see where they could do a second season to this show with like Qui-Gon and stuff. But I think kind of coming into this, I thought it was going to be like the Ewan and Hayden show, but it is not that. So I would say if you're someone who was thinking that going in, I would kind of tamper that expectation. There's a little bit of that, but it is not the focal point.
I thought it was interesting they introduced a bunch of side characters. The only one that really worked for me is Tala. They had the guy Roken. Roken didn't really register with me that much, and the other people who kind of help people disappear and escape and stuff. They were fine, but Tala, I thought, had a strong presence.
I like her a lot. I thought she was cool. She's one of those people that I could see like pop up in, could have popped up in something like Andor. And I'm like, oh, like that's the type of like rebel. Yes. I'm going to be like, I will do a quote unquote good thing, but I'm going to do some really bad things in order to achieve it. And I'm like, those are the types of people I'm really curious about. I'm like, oh, that's a fascinating character.
It's a shame that she had a droid that she was very loyal to also.
Exactly. You got to toss those thermal detonators, people. If you get one, toss it. They're so scary.
Don't hold on to it. You're supposed to throw it.
Remember that? Remember that at Jabba's palace, Return of the Jedi? Like, Leia's got one in her hand, and it's like, she threatens everybody in that room, and they're like, whoa.
And then can just turn it back off.
Exactly. She should have done that. And they would be like, get away, she's got thermal detonator, run! And then she just turns it off, and she's like, jumps.
When you create a likable character in a show, don't kill them off.
Yeah, like Darth Maul, so likable. General Grievous. But overall, Jason, would you recommend this?
Yeah, I had a great time watching it. Cool. It was a lot of fun, and like I said, with Star Wars fans or whatever, you never know what they're gonna like. So all I can say is, hey, watch that first episode, see what you think. I thought it got better as it went along. Yeah. Yeah. And I thought it had a good ending.
Yeah. And if you're only there for the Vader crazy stuff, I would say that's like from episode 4 onwards is more of that, where like Vader shows up, starts snapping necks, and then you see him fight in 5 and 6 and stuff like that.
And like I say, the one flaw in the final episode is just, what is Reva doing? Is she there to kill Luke, or what's going on? Is she there to take a look-see? One thing that it's kind of funny is, in Star Wars Rebels, there's an episode where Ezra goes to Tatooine, and Obi-Wan basically says, get out of here. You don't belong here. You're not supposed to be here. This isn't part of your story, or basically. He's like, oh, okay. And he takes off. So when Darth Maul shows up and he wants to see the Chosen One, is the Chosen One here? And Obi-Wan's like, hey, I got to take you out right now. And he does immediately. Reva, with knowledge of Luke, or I don't even know if she really knew who he was, but Obi-Wan could not let her leave there alive.
Right? Yeah. Yeah. That comes, it also comes back into the whole thing that, like, so proving my point earlier that Luke is more important in the original trilogy because he's the chosen one. But really, truly, the true chosen one, the end of it all, is still Anakin, right? Because he's the one who does it.
Anakin was the prophesized chosen one.
And he balanced out the Force, not completely, because if he did that, he'd probably have to wipe out Luke and Leia too, and then also blow himself up. So he'd be like, there are no more Force users anywhere. Like, we're all balanced. But yeah, I don't know. I agree. It is weird. And I think a lot of that is because they want to have a future with her. I thought they were going to kill her in the show and then be like, all right, if we're going to give her her own show, it's going to be a prequel to this again. But they
no
did
more
not do that.
prequels. Yeah. Maybe
Yeah,
she'll show up on the Ahsoka show or something, like, and she's older.
Dude,
I don't know.
Jason, I wanted so badly to have more flashback time at the temple and show like a younger Ahsoka for just a minute, like, and not with the short hair Anakin, but the longer hair Anakin, because they could have done multiple time periods. But you know, if Ahsoka is like canon now, and Anakin was a master without being a master, you know what I mean? Like that whole thing. They should have shown off like a young Ahsoka or something. That would have been so cool to see him been like a young, like kind of spunky Ahsoka, and then you know Obi would be like, she reminds me a lot of you at your age, and Anakin's like, yeah, like you could be anything other than a babysitter, like something like that would play super well into this show. Like I'm just saying.
It would have annoyed me so much if it when Reva's going after Luke. And you think that Obi-Wan's going to show up to save him, but instead it's Ahsoka. And it's like, wait, what? And it's like, tune in next fall for the new Ahsoka series. It's like, what? Come on.
Thank goodness.
They resisted.
They resisted, yeah. No, they were like, Qui-Gon's the bait for the future if we do anything, which, you know, they definitely could do. But he's like, all right, so what? Here's what you're going to want to do. You're going to want to take a lightsaber to the face, all right? And you're going to turn into a Force ghost. All right, but I'm going to teach you how to do it because I didn't know how to do this, but I'm going to teach you how to do it so when you die, your body is gone, all right? I didn't. You had to, like, hold my dying body. Like, you're not going to have any of that. Don't worry about it. Ugh, man, that'd be great. Yeah, but, I'd be really curious to hear what other people think about this. I know a lot of people, and Star Wars, I feel like Star Wars amongst almost any fandom that I know of or would maybe consider to be a part of seems to be the most... I'm not sure if I want to say divisive, but there's just people have very certain tastes when it comes to Star Wars, and there are certain like groups of episodes that people are like, I love this, I hate this. So I think if you're a fan of the prequels specifically, that would help here a lot because you're going to get more of that stuff. And maybe a smidge of the original stuff too, as far as like the setting and things like that. But yeah, so
I would say mostly I just want to feel something from these stories and not just be like, oh, whatever, it's another Star Wars show. But I actually felt some emotion in this, and I was glad for that.
Just because Ewan and Hayden, man, when they're together, you just can't help but feel a little something, something. You know what I mean? Like, and they're great actors, especially Ewan. He's just everything he's in, every like shot or scene he was in. I'm like, yep. I believe this. I just see Obi.
It got me in the feels a couple of times.
He's good. He's great. All right. Well, Jason, is there anything else you want to say about Obi-Wan before we wrap up today's episode?
Just this. May the Force be with you.
Oh my gosh. Excellent. Dang. That's like the finale, even though I was going to do plugs and stuff. Like I was saying earlier, Jason,
I stole your thunder, didn't I?
No, it's all right. I'll take it back. I was lightning before the thunder. Is that what?
Oh,
look at that. That's an Imagine Dragons thing. I had to do it. Anywho, what I want to say is this. Thank you so much, Jason, for being on again, because you've been on a bunch lately, and I really appreciate that. I know this has not been like the most consistent show ever since I moved out to California, but it's so much fun. Like when big things like this pop up, to try to like kind of make a show about it. And as I've said before, like I moved out here for acting, so it's kind of fun to kind of analyze this a little bit, but then also think about like, well, if I were in it or how I would, tackle it or whatever else. And it's just like a fun exercise for me, but it's just fun chatting with you. So thank you, Jason.
You're welcome, sir. It's always fun to have a nice conversation with you and be on your show.
Yes, it's just like my excuse to hang out with you, because then it's like, yeah, we can talk for like an hour and a half about this thing.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah,
Have a good time, and we're kind of all over the place, but it's still fun. It
totally.
is. If I hope people have watched the entire series when they listen to this.
I hope so too, or like even if they haven't, that they can still follow along enough where they're like, all right, they're kind of talking about the big points. We're not getting like super into the nitty gritty as much. We did a few times, but
right.
Yeah. And also, if anybody wants to help the channel, the absolute best way to do it is literally just share it around on Twitter and stuff. I'm not asking for likes or money or anything like that. If you just share us around, that would be great. Or just tell us what to do better, because I love feedback. I love just hearing from people, like if they like the show, if they like the length, the format, all that stuff. If they want the old segments at the end to pop back up or whatever else, just let me know. Because I'm making this not only to talk to Jason, but also to start a conversation, a dialogue with other people, because it's important to hear other people's thoughts. Hear from all sides, baby, not just the narrow, dogmatic view of the Jedi, as somebody really smart once said.
Always two there are.
Exactly. That's what, yeah, and that's when Darth Vader pulls up.
And the special guest.
The host and the special guest. Well, I've done it by myself a few times, which is tough. They should say always two there are with lightsabers. Like somebody always pulls out another lightsaber from behind them.
Yeah.
It's like, oh.
Somewhere along, that's what's so funny, the dual lightsaber thing. For years there were always fan films, and they always had two lightsabers.
Man.
What's cooler than one lightsaber? I know, two lightsabers.
It is really
and
cool.
Then Phantom Menace came out, and it was like, no, you know what's cooler? Double bladed lightsabers. Like, oh.
Yeah, I just don't trust I don't know why I always think about myself holding a lightsaber, because they're not real. And one day when they are, I would never want to use a double-sided one, because I would chop myself in half immediately. I'd be like, this looks pretty cool.
I'd lose my toes for sure.
Like, yeah, I'd be done pretty quick. That's why I like the two separate ones. That's why my Sith is going to have that in Star Wars one day, Jason. I'm going to have two lightsabers separate. I'm going to be like Sidious in Clone Wars. It's going to be great. Everybody's going to love it. But again, I appreciate everybody tuning in. I thank you so much for spending your time here. You could be listening to anybody. But special shout outs to people who usually make it to the end of the show. Jason, you're usually one of them. But Ryan, thank you so much for listening all the way to the end. And potentially Caden, Mr. Zora Caviar. I'll have to throw that out there too. If anybody else wants a shout out at the end of the show like this, just leave it down in the comments or tweet it at me, and I will do it next time. Either way, again, Jason, thank you so much. Did you have any final thoughts there that you wanted to say? Is this where you wanted to say, may the force be with you?
Yes. When I go, it's my time. I want to come back as a blue glowy.
A blue glowy, not even Force Ghost, a blue glowy. Beautiful.
I remember that's what they used to call Star Wars Galaxy's the MMO. They would call it a blue glowy.
Okay, you want to come back as a blue glowy?
Yes.
I think you would, Jason. I hope so.
Well, hello there. It's like, what are you doing here? I've been here the whole time.
Yeah, I'd be like, Jason, I'm in the shower, dude.
It's like, dude, boundaries, get out
Come
of
on.
here.
And you're like, I can't help it. I see everything now. You're like, man, dang it.
The force flows through me.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, get out of here, weirdo. Come on.
My gosh, can you help my power bill? Can you go put your hand in my TV and power it up? Anyway, again, thank you for being here, Jason. Thank you, everybody, for watching. And until next time.
Sorry for making it weird.
No, it's great. No, this is going to be memorable. If anybody made it this far, I really want someone to comment on this. # blue glowy. If somebody types that or sends it to us, I will know someone made it to the end of this. But usually, that's just a few people. Either way, until next time, just remember to adapt and overcome. Bye-bye.
Bye!